So let's talk about this concert for a minute, Camille. So in this town, Tallahassee, now this is a town that I left in 1977 after I graduated from FAMU. And I graduated in physics, and I loved it. But I went to New York, and from New York, my base, I traveled the world. But I returned at the end of 2018 to be director of music industry. So I had met one lady, Patrice Floyd. I had met her through her husband, Dwight, at a concert in Carnegie Hall. And he was a guy I knew in high school, and he wanted me to meet his family when his children and his wife were performing at Carnegie Hall. So imagine that. And so I came to Tallahassee, and I learned of her work. So she has an orchestra, and she has a school, and it's called the Javasia Arts Conservatory. And so here's a black woman of my generation who for many years in Tallahassee, as long as I've been gone, this woman has been teaching young people classical music. Primarily people from the black community, other what we call minority groups, whatever that means, and but people who have been excluded from classical music too much, music that we are a part of, music that we help create worldwide. So Bishop Michael Curry, who is the presiding bishop of the Episcopal Church, came to town, Tallahassee, and I was invited to play for him at St. Michael and All Angels Episcopal Church, where I had grown up. And that's where I saw Mrs. Floyd again after all those many years. And she did a number, and I did a number, one of my own compositions. And the bishop really liked it. And, you know, Bishop Curry, he's the person who did the royal wedding. He married Meghan Markle to then Prince Harry. So the long and short of it is from that experience, Mrs. Floyd and I started talking about doing things. So her name is Patrice Floyd. So Patrice got the idea, you know, right in the most dreadful part of the pandemic. She says, you know, Tooks, when this thing starts to lift, I want you to do a concert in Tallahassee with my orchestra at St. Peter's Anglican Cathedral, where her conservatory is housed. And I said, well, that sounds great. And quite honestly, we were all just trying to survive. I didn't know the date would ever come. Even though I said yes in spirit, I didn't know when it was going to happen. I couldn't be sure. I don't think anybody did. We were all guessing back then. And as recently as Christmas of 2021, a few months ago, one of my children, Channing, said to me, he says, you know, Daddy, I really think that by the end of January, this Omicron variant is going to start letting up. That's what the scientists think. And we've been following the science. Believing in God, trusting in our faith, and reading the scientific evidence and making sound decisions. So he said, I don't think you have to worry about that. And my children were very protective of me. They were really careful all through the pandemic that, you know, that I wasn't exposed. So we went forward in faith that we would have a chance to do this concert. And if something changed, we would have to stop. I was doing work. I helped to put some things together on Broadway for the relaunch of Broadway. But as you probably know, a couple months into the relaunch of Broadway, they had to pull it again. Had to pull it back because Omicron was tough. But right now we're going in the right direction again. Knock on wood, right? So, okay, so here we are with this concert, and with everything that I do, I'm going to do my best to do it honestly. I don't want to spend any time on God's earth not living with on the honest path of what I'm trying to accomplish. It doesn't mean I'm always going to get it right. It's okay to fail, but it's not okay to not try to do things just to get it right, but to try to get things honest, to tell the story you can tell. So here we are, and Patrice says to me, well, it's Black History Month. This is what, we want, but we don't want you to do Negro spirituals or gospel. We want you, you're black, you're an African American. So having you do your music with our orchestra, which is a black conservatory, of course, we're going to be racially mixed because that's where we are, but to understand that the core of it, the ribbon that connects us, is the fact that we are people who grew up in this African American, African diaspora. She said, so that's enough. Whatever you choose to do is going to be fine. Just use the orchestra as much as you care to. I'm like, well, this is wonderful. So here we are in Black History Month. We get a chance to do a concert. And I said, well, what's going to be most meaningful at a time like this? So I started doing what I was called to do. So I'm thinking about repertoire. And she's always going to open her concerts with the children showing how they've grown, playing little instruments and playing their pieces. And then perhaps a big piece with the orchestra. But when when I'm there, front and center with an opportunity to tell a story, what's the story that I want to tell? Well, I've learned through the years that people are fascinated with my career, that I've worked with so many people of large names, people like Michael Jackson, people like Aretha Franklin, and many others, Diana Ross, Luther Vandross, Quincy Jones, Leonard Bernstein, Henry Mancini. There's so many names, Burt Bacharach. There's so many names of people like that that are important for what they've contributed and how they've been recognized in the world. So that's a part of the story, so that's great. I share that kind of information with my students as well. But what's your personal take on this? My personal take on this is that I've returned to Tallahassee to take on an assignment to try to positively impact the new generation of students who are studying music at Florida A&M University. And also, to do that, I need to continue to be in touch with my roots that I came through here and looking over the hill. Okay, we're on the highest of 7 hills. Well, what's over that hill? Well, who are you, Darryl? So I've spent my life not only professionally doing those kinds of things that I mentioned, but most importantly, that I've been grounded with my wife raising our family. And when I look at the African American tenors, the people who most greatly influenced me, people with tremendous singing voices, individually different, Jackie Wilson, Sam Cooke, Marvin Gaye, all of the members of the Temptations, David Ruffin, especially Eddie Kendricks, Curtis Mayfield, the Impressions. Now, every single person whose name I've named so far has died. They've predeceased me. They've died way too young, in my opinion. Why is it? Well, I don't know, but I know one thing for sure. In the world of music, the tenor voice in opera, for instance, that's the person who sings a romantic lead. The baritone, sings a different kind of part. But you just think about these, Donny Hathaway. And not long after Donny Hathaway died, I was singing those duets with Roberta Flack. Luther Vandross. So many people, James Ingram, so many people who were a part of my life or people whom I looked up to. I got to know so many of these people and worked with them. But all of a sudden, I've gone from this kid who grew up in something like a Wakanda at FAMU at that time, a black boy who, along with 3 black girls, were the only 4 people of color who entered that class at Florida High in 1968. When I think about that, those few months after the assassination of Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy, and I think about entering that world, and now all these years later, here I am with somebody with these experiences, and I really have an obligation to share them, and not share them in an angry way, not share them in a hurtful, sorrowful way. We've all had so much sorrow over the last 2 years. I've lost so many friends, people who were going to maybe die anyway because of long-term diseases or age, but then COVID deaths. I've lost a lot of colleagues and friends, and I'm sure many people have. So we don't need a bunch of sorrow. We don't have to approximate sorrow. We don't have to go there. We all carry it. There's no such thing as a human condition without sadness. So there I am faced with the dilemma, the artist's dilemma. You know, what do I do? Do I sit around and be just terribly gloomy about these things? Or do I realize that everyone has all the sorrow that they can bear, and can we bring a little light into shine a little light into people's lives? And absolutely we can. That's what we're here for, to shine a little light into people's lives. So as it turns out, all 4 of my children were able to join me for this. Well, there it is right there. That's a story in and of itself. This guy's coming to join a concert, his family's going to join him. Wow, that's so interesting. It's fun. And yeah, so that's the nature of it. So I'm really proud of my parents, how they taught me and raised my brother and me to treat people like their brothers or sisters. Growing up in this community when I didn't see, I'll put it in the positive, I saw my mother and father treat everybody with dignity and respect. Now if they found out somebody was trifling, that's different. But it didn't matter if they were dealing with the administration of the university, or dealing with their colleagues and friends, or dealing with people who might be in other jobs that were not those faculty positions, or just in the community. I can say my mom and my dad never met a stranger. And so how I was able to process that and take that with me throughout my life, it better show in my behavior. You better see in me somebody who saw that in their parents and is giving that back to my community. And what's my community? Our community.